Chapter 7. Dax drove slowly, taking in the rolling wheatlands east of Conifer Cliffs. He knew, from reading advertisements, that between 1909 and 1919, over 80,000 people moved to Montana and homesteaded more acres of land than existed in the combined states of Maryland, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Delaware, and Rhode Island. Montana was heavily promoted worldwide by the Great Northern Railway to further its rail lines and by the federal government, which needed farmers to grow wheat for the World War I effort. 80,000 people couldn't be wrong, Dax thought, but with his limited access to new information, he was unaware of the drought of the last few years. It was mid-afternoon when Dax pulled up in front of a cafe on the main street of Conifer Cliffs. He was anxious to eat a good meal. He was tired of salami and apples for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dax entered the cafe and sat at a table next to the window, giving him a good view of his car and its contents. "Can I help you, sir?" a skinny young girl asked. "Do you have good beefsteak?" Dax asked. "Yes, sir," replied the girl, flipping her long blonde hair back over her shoulder. "What comes with that?" "Mashed potatoes with gravy and green beans," she answered. "Okay, cook the steak rare and coffee, please." "Sure thing," she smiled, showing a large gap between her front teeth. Dax looked out the window across the covered boardwalk. He noticed many people waiting at the train depot down the street. It seemed that families were traveling during the middle of the summer. Dax thought they needed to be home, tending to their farms or working for someone. Something seemed strange to him. "Here you go, sir." The waitress served a cup of coffee. "Are you new around here?" "I've been here for 15 minutes already." Dax checked his newly acquired watch. "You are the first person I have met in Conifer Cliffs." "My name is Dax." "What's yours?" he asked, holding out his hand. "I'm Laura," she said, shaking his hand. "Is the cook over there your father?" Dax asked. "Yeah. Mom and Dad cook here, and my sister and I are the waitresses." "How old are you?" Dax asked. "I'm 14 and a half, and my sister is 16. Order up," came from the kitchen. "Here's your steak. Do you want to cut into it to see if it's cooked enough?" Laura inquired. Dax cut. "Just right," he replied. "I heard it moo," she giggled. "That's what cows are supposed to do." Dax grinned. "Is it always so quiet in here?" "We get more customers for breakfast, lunch, and in the evening for dinner, but we usually don't get customers between lunch and dinner. This is my breakfast and my lunch." "I've been traveling," Dax explained. "Where did you come from?" she asked. "Ireland. Long drive," she giggled. "I still have dishes to wash." "Enjoy your meal." Dax was, by nature, very ambitious. He wanted to make something of himself. Now that he was rich, he played with a new set of rules. He knew he needed to be frugal and not squander his good fortune. He chewed a big hunk of beef as the wheels in his head turned. He needed to meet some people and get a sense of what was happening in Conifer Cliffs. He needed to check into a hotel, open a bank account, and meet a banker with whom he could discuss the local economy. This late in the day, he just needed to get settled in a good room, go to a bar tonight, and meet some locals. He finished his meal and introduced himself to Laura's father, Tom Dyson. "Can you recommend a good hotel?" Dax asked. "The best one is down the street on the right," Tom pointed. "But the cheapest is up the other way, 2 blocks. Take a left, and 2 more blocks on the right. It depends on whether you want to spend 50 cents a night or $2. "Thanks. I'll probably be seeing a lot of you in the next few days." "What time do you open for breakfast?" 6 o'clock, Dyson replied. Dax checked into the nicer hotel, remembering the beds he slept in at Skokie and Chicago. "Is there a secure place to park my car?" he asked the receptionist. "Nobody bothers anything around here. Park it close to the building where the night clerk can see it, and it will be safe." Since there was no money in the car and he could take his guns to his room, Dax took the man's advice. Dax soaked in a hot bath, the first one since the night before he left Chicago. He dressed in his only remaining clean clothes and returned to the front desk. "Does anybody do laundry around here?" he asked the receptionist. "The Chinaman across the street behind the bank," the man pointed. Dax bundled up his dirty clothes, dropped them off at the laundry, and checked to see if the bank was still open. When he walked up to the front door, he could see it was not only closed for the day, but it appeared to be closed forever. Dax walked down the boardwalk to a sign that read Rogers Bar. "You have any whiskey?" Dax asked in his thick brogue. "It's prohibition in the United States," the bartender growled, rolling his eyes. "Sorry, I was hoping we were far enough from all the old ladies who thought we shouldn't be drinking, and that you might be able to forget about prohibition." Dax smiled convincingly. "You a revenuer trying to set me up?" the bartender asked suspiciously. "I haven't seen you around before." "No, I'm not a revenuer. I'm just thirsty, and you're right. This is my first day in town. I'd like to meet some local businessmen to see what's going on around here. Do you have any sarsaparilla? People are leaving in droves. They're leaving their farms, their houses, and their livestock. Just getting the hell out of here with whatever they can take with them. That's what's happening around here," the bartender replied gruffly, opening a sarsaparilla. "Banks in Montana are falling like flies. The people who had money in the banks have lost it all. They're leaving on the train with only a suitcase, looking for a place to start over. Times were good here until the drought began in 1918, but it's been a tough 5 years since then. All the good wheat land is just grazing land for cattle now. There is barely enough water for the cows to drink." This was new information to Dax, and it startled him. "Wow, I thought this place was the promised land." Dax commented in amazement. "I've been trying for 5 years just to get here. My name is Dax McCatra." He extended his right hand. "Roger Martin." The bartender shook Dax's hand. Martin, a large man with broad shoulders, was in his 40s, balding, and had a well-trimmed mustache and goatee. He was businesslike, but friendly. "Are you looking for a place to settle or just passing through?" "I'm just looking for a good place to start a cattle ranch. I have a little money to invest. Not much, but a little," Dax said, responding to a different set of circumstances than he would have before he heard Martin's rant. "It doesn't take much money to buy land and cattle around here right now. You might have come to the right place," Martin said. "What the banks didn't foreclose on, the county took for taxes. The only ones who survived here were those who didn't owe any money and didn't keep their savings in the bank. If you want a bargain on land, go down to the courthouse and talk to the tax collector. Even the banks lost land they foreclosed on because they couldn't pay the taxes. This sounds like the place I have been looking for. Looks like I can get started for not too much money," Dax commented, thinking about all the possibilities he suddenly realized. Martin sized up the young man. Well-groomed, red hair, sparkling blue eyes with slight crow's feet in the corners. He had the face of a babe with a week's worth of soft red whiskers, but his hands looked hard and calloused. Dax blended in well in his new jeans and cotton shirt. "Let me introduce you to some friends of mine. It might be good for you to get to know them." Martin pointed to a table in the back of the room where 3 men sat. He walked around the end of the bar and motioned for Dax to follow him. "Hey boys, this is Dax McCatra. He's new in town and seems to be interested in putting together a cattle ranch. Dax, this is Ben Dickinson, Jim Ballard, and Otto Langford," Martin said, pointing to each as he spoke their names. "Good to meet you all," Dax said. "Likewise," Langford, a big, husky brute, replied, extending a thick, clubby hand. "Have a seat," Ballard, a tall, thin man with a new, high-crowned straw cowboy hat, offered, pointing to the empty chair. "What the hell brought you here?" Dickinson, a short, dark-complected, chunky cowboy, asked, sipping his home brew. "Get him a beer," Langford said. "He looks okay." Martin walked back to the bar and returned with a warm beer he'd ladled from a crock. "So, McCatron, tell us about yourself," Ballard insisted inquisitively, looking Dax in the eye. "Well, I came from Ireland a few years back with a little money. I stayed in New York and parlayed my small nest egg into something bigger, so I decided to come west and start a cattle ranch," Dax explained. "I can at least believe you came from Ireland," Langford laughed. "You sound exactly like my mother's father, who came over during the potato famine and started a cattle ranch here. He's buried up on a hillside overlooking his place, but I have to do all the work." "I'll bet you have to ask him what to do," Dickinson teased. They all chuckled. "We all run cattle, and none of us got hurt like the wheat farmers. But when it doesn't rain, water is a real problem," Ballard said, moving his hat back and scratching his head. "Most of the people who got into trouble borrowed a lot of money when it was easy to get during the war. When the drought hit, they couldn't make their payments. There's probably 20,000 acres bordering my ranch you could buy for a song. It's all fenced and ready to turn out on. I'd buy it in a minute, but I've already bought all I can," Dickinson explained. "Is it all one ownership?" Dax asked. "The county owns most of it, and you could buy the rest from 3 different owners who need money badly," Dickinson explained. "They might like to stay and work for you. You could use their help if you had that big of a spread. I've tried every way I can think of to buy it all, but I don't want to go broke like so many who have overextended themselves. I think there are only 2 different owners in that block." "The county already took over the Smith place," Ballard said. "Are there any good houses and barns on these spreads?" asked Dax. "Each of the different places the county took for taxes has its own set of buildings. The buildings on Smith's place are nice, and they haven't been abandoned for more than a couple of months. The other places only have tar paper shacks," Ben explained. "What happened to Smith?" Dax asked. "John is a great guy and a good neighbor. He borrowed too much money when times were good. Then, when times were tough, he built a sawmill to try to make enough money selling lumber to get through. One day, his shirt sleeve caught on the carriage of the mill, dragging him through the big saw and cutting his arm off. Everybody helped him as best they could, but people were too broke to be able to pull him out of debt. All the buildings on his place were built out of lumber that John cut. The mill is still out there, too. John and his wife, Elaine, are living in a shack down the street. She's working in the hotel, making up rooms, and he's a cowboy doing day work for whoever needs help. He'd be a good man for you if you bought his old place. He's a good cowboy, mechanic, carpenter, and farmer. He can do about anything, even with only one arm," Ben elaborated. "You would have to put up with all of us as your neighbors. The block Ben's talking about touches all 3 of our ranches," Jim Ballard said. "Are you all good neighbors?" Dax asked, smiling. "As long as you keep your part of the fences fixed," Langford laughed. "If you're interested, we'll introduce you to everybody you'll need to know to get it done. John Smith can show you the land, from your car and on horseback. I'll go to the courthouse tomorrow morning and talk to the tax collector. Where can I find you fellers?" Dax questioned. "My house is just north of town, a mile. Continue north on this street. There's a sign on my gate that says Ballard. If you need to find Nate Davis and Trent Webster, the guys with farms inside that block, I'll take you to their places and introduce you. I'll take you up on that, but I need to hit the hay right now. I've had a long day. Nice meeting you guys, and I'll see you again soon." Dax retired to his hotel. He was tired but anxious about the next day. 20,000 acres, a bunch of cows, and lots of money left over, he thought to himself. He needed to buy a horse to look over this vast piece of land and have a surveyor verify its boundaries. And Polly. He needed to send a telegram to Polly. His head was full of things he needed to get done concerning where he was and what he was doing. He lay in bed until 11 o'clock, too tired to get up and too anxious to sleep. Finally, He converted his thoughts into dreams. At 6 a.m., Dax entered Dyson's cafe and ordered ham, eggs, fried potatoes, and coffee. After his leisurely breakfast, he drank more coffee while he read a copy of the Brookston newspaper. As soon as it was open, Dax walked to the telegraph office and sent Polly a telegram. Dear Polly, I have arrived in Conifer Cliffs, Montana. I had a good trip, and all is well. I miss you so much. Love, Dax. Next, Dax went to the courthouse to meet with the tax collector to find out what land was available at rock-bottom prices that the county had seized for back taxes. The block of land he heard about in the bar last night was the biggest contiguous piece the county had, and it was as it had been explained to him. He studied the maps, the bordering ownerships, as well as some ownerships inside the block of county land. He needed to look at the land with someone who knew it well. He returned to his hotel and asked the clerk where he could find Elaine Smith. I think she is cleaning your room or the one next to it, the clerk replied. Dax climbed the stairs. His room had already been cleaned. He peeked into the open door next to his room. Is your name Elaine Smith? He asked a woman making the bed. Yes, and who might you be? She answered. My name is Dax McCatron. I'm in the room next door. He extended his hand to her. Nice to meet you, Mr. McCatron. And what can I do for you? Ben Dickinson recommended that I meet your husband, Dax said. John is out chasing cows somewhere today. Not sure where, she said, fluffing a pillow. I could tell him to come to your room to meet you tonight when he gets in. That would be good. Is he working now? He works every day, but usually it's for friends who helped us when we were in need. Most people he works for can't afford to pay him. If he could help me, I can pay him a fair wage, Dax offered. That would be a breath of fresh air, Elaine replied happily. I'll be sure he finds you this evening. If I'm not in the hotel, I'll be at Dyson's cafe or maybe the bar down the street. If you've got a job, he'll find you, she smiled. At noon, Dax returned to Dyson's cafe and ordered meatloaf for lunch. He wanted to meet John Smith and start looking over the 20,000 acres, as well as meet the people who lived inside the block who wanted to sell. By himself, he did not know where to start. John Smith might be the critical link he needed. Dax finished his lunch and drove to Jim Ballard's place. Under the shade of a giant cottonwood in front of the bar, Dax found Jim shoeing a horse. Seeing Dax, Jim put the horse's foot down, removed his straw hat, and wiped the sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his wrinkled, blue cotton work shirt. Can I help you with anything? Dax asked. No, I don't need any help. This is a one-man job, but you can sit on the fence and shoot the shit, Jim offered. I met John Smith's wife this morning. He's out working somewhere and won't be back until evening. So I thought I'd drive around and look at the country this afternoon. I hope he will be available to go with me tomorrow so he can explain what I am looking at, Dax said. John is a good man. I hope you can hook up with him, Jim commented, rasping his horse's hoof. What's the going wage around here? Dax asked. I'd like to hire him to help me for a while. $1 a day is what he hires out for day wages, and he's worth every penny of it, no matter what you want him to do. Jim set down his horse's hoof. Do you think he would feel bad showing me the place the county took from him? Dax asked. It probably wouldn't feel too good to him, but he needs a job and knows what position he's in. He should welcome the chance to make a little money, Jim said. It's unfortunate what happened to him and how he lost his place. He and his family worked hard to make that place nice, and then to have that accident and lose it all was too bad. Does he have kids? Dax asked. Yeah, he has 3. The oldest, Samantha, is probably 18 by now, a sweet girl. She helped her mother do everything since she was just a little girl. They grew a big garden and kept a nice house. Elaine and Samantha took good care of John and the 2 boys. Quinn is probably 16 and Colm is, say, 14. Both boys helped their dad every day they were not in school. They're a good family, and now they're living in that little shack in town. It just doesn't seem right. I need to run over to Trent Webster's to borrow a few horseshoe nails. Why don't you drive me over there, and I'll introduce you to him. He has one of the places you might be interested in, Jim offered. When Jim and Dax pulled into his yard, Trent Webster dug a post hole to repair a corral next to a dilapidated tar paper shack. A dirty-faced little kid made mud pies on rocks supporting one side of a water trough. Trent called back a ferocious Australian shepherd with one blue eye and one white eye, trying to eat the left front tire of Dax's car. Jim and Dax walked over to Trent, who was leaning on his post hole digger. Trent Webster, this is Dax McCatron, Jim introduced. The two men shook hands. Have you got a few horseshoe nails, Trent? I ran out on the last foot of old blades. Sure, Jim, Trent replied. Be right back. Trent walked to a small, rough lumber shed and returned with a soup can, which he handed to Jim. Thanks, Jim said as he took a few nails out of the can. Dax is new around here and looking to put together a cow outfit. I'm showing him around and introducing him to the neighbors. Come on over to the house. I think Susan has some lemonade. Let's sit on the porch and talk, Trent offered. Trent opened the door and poked his head inside. Susan, we have company. Can you bring us 3 glasses of lemonade? The men sat down out front on rounds of cut wood. Susan soon appeared with 2 full mason jars, handing one to Jim and one to Dax. Susan, this is Dax, the new guy on the block, Trent introduced. Dax, this is my wife, Susan. Nice to meet you, Susan. Dax nodded. Good to meet you, Dax, Susan replied, shaking his hand. She turned, entered the house, and returned with one more mason jar. She handed it to her husband. Dax is interested in putting together a cattle ranch. Jim explained to Trent. He's looking at all the county land that borders you, and I told him I thought you might be interested in selling your place. We may be interested. We've been thinking about moving to Oklahoma. How many acres do you have here? Dax asked, already knowing from the county records. 320, Trent replied. In the wet years, it was good wheat land, but we didn't get our seed back when the drought came. 2 years ago, we finally seeded it to grass and got a few cows. But this place isn't big enough to make a living with cows. If you want to see the place, we can get on the horses and take a look, Trent offered. That would be great, Dax answered enthusiastically. When would that be convenient for you? We can do it now if you'd like, Trent answered, sipping the bottom of his mason jar. Run me home first, Dax. I need to finish shoeing my horse. You can come back and spend some time with Trent, Jim said. I'll get a couple of horses saddled up, and I'll be ready when you get back, Trent offered. Dax and Trent mounted their horses 20 minutes later and rode to all corners of the 320 acres of rolling wheat land. In the distance, Trent pointed out rock outcroppings that marked the neighboring ownership. They stopped at a spring in the middle of the place to let the horses drink, then rode back to the house. That gives me more to think about, Dax mused aloud as they unsaddled their horses and hung the tack in the shed. You're welcome to stop by any time after you get your thinking done, Trent smiled. Thanks for your time, Dax said. Now I need to get back to town to meet up with John Smith. Be good to John. He's the salt of the earth. That's what everyone says. After I've had a chance to understand everything about the land around you, I'll come to see you. Thanks for your time today. Looking forward to it, Trent waved. Dax drove back to town thinking about the property, Polly, and how nice it was to go into a cafe and order whatever he wanted for dinner. He parked his car at the hotel and walked down the boardwalk to Dyson's. Sitting in the cafe, he thought how lucky he was to have landed in this beautiful place, meeting such friendly people. I get to see you 3 times today, Laura exclaimed, startling Dax from his deep thoughts. Lucky you, laughed Dax. I'll have your beef stew and some toast. Dax was halfway through his dinner when a tall, thin, one-armed, middle-aged man entered the restaurant. He wore dirty Levi's, a gray work shirt, and a soiled straw hat. "I'm looking for some guy named McCatron," the man told Tom Dyson. "Dax, is your last name McCatron?" Tom asked. "Yes, you must be John Smith," Dax inquired. "I am," John replied. "Can I buy you dinner and we can talk?" Dax asked. "Never turn down a good dinner. I'll have beef stew, Laura." "Please, sit down," Dax offered in the middle of a hearty handshake. "What can I do for you, Mr. McCatron?" "Dax, please. What can I do for you, Dax?" "Jim Ballard suggested I talk to you about helping me get familiar with the area. Maybe introduce me to some of your neighbors. Show me the big block of land that the county has for sale north and east of town. Just help me get an understanding of the area. My old place is part of the block of land, so I know it well," John said with a sad look in his eyes. "Yes, I am sorry for your misfortune," Dax replied understandingly. "So, how long would you want me to help you?" "It depends on what we find out about putting together a cattle ranch. If it all goes well and I buy the land, I will need help until I die," John smiled. "By the looks of your age, I think I'll be kicking the bucket 20 years before you. If that's the case, I might need your sons to help me." Dax smiled. "When do we start?" John questioned. "How about in the morning?" Dax answered anxiously. "Can you get us some good horses?" "I have 4 good horses for sale. We can use them," John answered. "If they are good ones and we put the ranch together, I'll need several horses and lots of cows. Let's take one step at a time and see how it goes. I have a lot to learn. Can you meet me here for breakfast at 6 a.m.? Dax asked, sipping his coffee. "Sure, I'll be here. We need to get permission from the county to keep the horses in my old horse pasture. That's kind of in the middle of the land you want to look at. I can pony them up there, and we can drive your car back and forth to town for a few days. It's 5 miles up to my ranch." "I wish it were still my ranch," John remarked wistfully as Laura set their supper on the table. "Sounds like a good idea. We'll talk to the county tax man, Atchison. I think his name is, as soon as he opens up in the morning. Let's meet here for breakfast, then talk to him." Dax planned aloud, chewing the beef in his stew. After dinner, John walked with Dax to his hotel and continued home. Dax stopped at the hotel desk to get the key to his room. "You have a telegram, Mr. McCatron." The clerk handed Dax his key and the telegram. He sat on a chair in the lobby and eagerly opened it, figuring it was from Polly. "Dear Dax, my bank was robbed again today. I don't feel safe in Chicago anymore. The mobs here are terrible. In the short time that we spent together, I developed strong feelings toward you. I wish we could be together. I miss you, Dax. Love, Polly." This news both excited and worried Dax. The telegraph office and courthouse were closed. He felt anxious. He needed to send Polly a telegram and meet with Ed Atchison at the courthouse to get permission to keep John Smith's horses at his old ranch. Dax also felt caged. He wanted to be let out to get started on his project, but the time of day had him stifled. He decided to go to Roger's bar. "Hello, Dax McCatron." The bartender greeted him as he entered the smoke-filled bar. "You remembered my name," Dax replied. "Thank you for that, Roger Martin. Everyone in town knows your name and what you are up to," Roger smiled. "Word travels fast in small towns. Everyone wants to meet you. I think they all want to know how much money you have. The guys at the card table want to take some of it from you. They're out of luck. It was too hard to come by to be pissing it off at a card table. They will be sorry to hear that," Roger chuckled. "Tell everybody that I have $100 and I want to buy the state of Montana." "Cheap bastard, are ya?" Roger laughed. "Not really, but I didn't come here to give my money away," Dax said. "So, Are you a detective or a bartender? Roger dipped a glass of homebrew from the crock under the bar and set it in front of Dax. First one's on the house, he said. A big, burly man entered the bar. He was unshaven, with long black hair growing on the bridge of his nose and the rim of his ears. His clothes were worn beyond imagination, and his beat-up cowboy hat was full of holes that were too big to strain anything smaller than gravel. A dirty toe peeked through a once white, but now black, sock and out the end of a decomposed boot, long since vanished into the many furrows it had traveled. His voice boomed in the quiet bar. I'm looking for that new guy in town, an Irishman I've heard wants to buy a lot of land, he announced to Roger. Nate Davis, this is Dax McCatron. Roger pointed to Dax. Nate's palm engulfed Dax's hand. It was thick and meaty with stubby, stout fingers. His thumb was as big as a kosher dill pickle. It felt like shaking hands with a chunk of oak headed for the fireplace. Nate thudded down on the stool next to Dax. I've heard a lot about you, Dax, Nate remarked. I've only been here 2 days and met 10 or so people, Dax said. And really, no one knows much about me. Sounds like you've got a little money you want to spend, Nate said sarcastically. That would totally depend on what I got in return, I suppose, Nate grunted. Wrong time of the year to be looking for Santa Claus. I wanted to meet you. I guess you beat me to the draw. Dax smiled. Must have been the only thing I ever beat anybody to. Nate smiled back. I have 640 acres in the middle of the piece of ground you are looking at, Nate said. Yes, I am familiar with your place on a map, but I have not yet seen it on the ground. John Smith is showing me around, and we will meet up with you when I have a better understanding of the situation. Give Nate a beer, Roger, Dax said. They enjoyed a beer together and spent an hour visiting. I'd better retire to my hotel room, Dax stated. Got to get an early start tomorrow. Good talking to you, Dax. Hope to see you again soon, Roger said. See ya, Nate bellowed. Don't drink all the beer. I'll need some tomorrow, Dax remarked as he left the bar. Seems like a decent kind of guy, Nate commented to Roger. Yeah, I kind of like him, Roger replied. Dax sat at the table in his room and scratched out a letter to Polly that he would take to the telegraph office when it opened in the morning. He reassured her that she was heavy on his mind and that he needed her to come to him as soon as he was settled. He tossed and turned in bed, thinking about everything he needed to do. When morning came, he didn't know whether he had slept or not.